Ango is a form that we use. It's traditional, goes back in ancient Japan and the Soto lineage to sit for a long period of time. In our situation, we've modified it a little bit to be the whole month of February. This is our third year of doing the whole month of February, 28 days or 29 days, where we do nothing but sit for 8 hours a day for that full time, 4 hours in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the evening, and do very little, if any, sutra chanting. We just concentrate on Shikan Zazen. I invite everyone to come and do this together. It's important to do this to train your mind, and you may need the support of Sangha. Sangha may need the support of your presence. So please do that.
So I was asked to talk about the title, Why Become a Buddhist Monk? What was your talk title, Nyoka? Similar.
Yes.
Sure.
What it means to be a Buddhist monk.
So I'll get the why. Furlong's excited. The first thing that comes up for me is more of why not to, or all the wrong reasons to be a monk. At least how I've been trained, and most of us in the room have been trained, has been with quite a bit of tension on taking vows, even Jukai. I remember I was told to interview at least 4 different students of Sokuzan's to talk about what Jukai means to them, ask questions, just have an interview with them to talk to them about taking precepts and gluing yourself to the path. So to consider it, to be serious about what you're asking for rather than jump into it. Perhaps because there's a lot of idealism about what this path can give us as an identity of a peaceful person. It could be what it gives us as far as a community, what it gives us out of some sense of greed. And I think that can even be present in a genuine way, that you can still be inspired and still have that idealism occurring. So I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I think that holding back and not jumping into this is important to see our motivation for why we want to do it in the first place. In Dogen, I think I got it from watching Miyoka's talk, was that the kashaya, or robe, is sometimes called the robe of emancipation. And I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, that it gives us freedom, or it gives us a sovereignty, that the robe is powerful. And the chapter, I think, is called The Power of the Robe, depending on the translation, but there's some interesting material on what it means to sew a robe and become a monk. So I guess my reason for why it comes out of inspiration or resonance with the teachings, the teacher, and the community. I think for me personally, it wasn't just a desire to become a monk. It was to maybe go further into my practice with Sokuzan, with this particular teacher. I'm not so interested in other teachers, or he just happened to be in my life, and I wanted to go deeper. And I knew that if I didn't, I would regret it for the rest of my life. And maybe before I go too biographical with this, I think it's so different for everyone. So me telling the story isn't like it has to show up this way. There's only monks in the room right now, so it's an interesting audience to give a talk to. Some of the inspiration was from Dogen itself in that chapter. There's a out of Nagarjuna's work. Dogen is quoting Nagarjuna is talking about a female nun called Utpalavarna, who puts on a kashaya as a joke, and then in 3 lifetimes awakens. And I don't know why that just struck me as, and I think even the paragraph kind of spells it out that it's without the karma or effort of taking those precepts, those same actions and karma of going into hell and out of hell, there wouldn't have been benefit. But because she took the precepts, or because she wore the kashaya as a joke, suddenly that karma was with her to join with her so that it could help her work with whatever situation she was in. And I feel like that's what the Buddhist teachings are helping us to do with work, with any situation in our life. The phrase "one robe covers all" is part of our, or at least written in our precepts, in our long form of our precepts, and no hoarding materials or teachings. It says, each being thoroughly expounds the Dharma. One robe covers all. What need is there to emphasize or attach to certain words or objects? Kind of a puzzling phrase. And there's just a colon before it says one robe covers all. But I just think, I think of everything being included, that each being, everything is expounding the Dharma. The teachings of the Buddha include literally everything. And to go a little bit more to why is that it's valuable. Not many people are doing this, and I don't think I'd know if it was valuable or not unless I had met someone who I feel like reflected a quality of uprightfulness or dignity to their life, that I could see that somehow those teachings were not transforming, but apparent in that being. So for me, just a lot of inspiration. So that's for me the true reason why, but there's many reasons not to. And just because I feel that it's important and it was important for my life, it's helpful to look at people who aren't monks, because it's completely appropriate. We all have such different lives. You don't need to be a monk. There's not, it doesn't give you anything. I remember 2 of the interviews, one for Jukai and one for becoming a monk, to make sure I really wanted to do that. With Jukai, it was Unyo, and she said, are you just doing this because everyone else is getting Jukai? Because you're kind of like part of the club, you live here, you're a resident, and it helped me look at that, like that. It was some tension of be sure about this. And then I'll never forget Shoka's was, it's disappointing. Just because asked like, how was becoming a monk? And he said it was disappointing. And that still rings true for me too, that we think we want something till we have it. Disappointing. And everyone in the room is smiling a little bit at that, because maybe it's true. Maybe it's a little disappointing to look at our minds this intensely. Another reason why to do this that showed up for me was a recognition of foolishness in ourselves, of the deceptive quality of our minds and our thoughts, that we're going to need some help other than our thinking. We might need some strong forms. Another way of relating to this for me was bodhicitta, or the mind of awakening, or awakened heart, that I think that the resonance, that awakened quality is what draws us to the path. So I think that's present in anyone that has a true desire to become a monk or receive Jukai or even study the Buddhist Dharma, that there has to be some resonance with that because it's inherent in yourself. Another aspect I wanted to cover was being a monk is much more formal or perhaps stricter than a Jukai recipient, as in you might receive more teachings or a little bit more feedback on what to do with your life. And I wrote the phrase down, do it anyway. And that's what being a monk feels like for me. It gives me no wiggle room out of the scenario. I have to turn everything into the path, or at least endeavor to. And it's not really about the success, but for me, that's what being a monk is you're no matter how many times you fall over, you're getting back up and you're going to look at what this is. That you said you wanted to do this for your life, so that should be the intention as I understand it. I'll take questions at this point.
Yoga bowing is doing what we don't want to do helpful on the path.
I think so. I think we need to do some of that. I think maybe you're talking about the context of receiving a teaching like that. Doing it anyway, like sitting anyway, even if you don't feel like it. Yeah, because we just avoid the whole time. So we need a little bit of pushing in that area. If that's what you're talking about. Can you get me closer?
Yoga bowing, what are we avoiding?
On some levels, just seeing what fools we are, seeing what we're actually thinking and feeling. It's not all that wholesome, and at least that's the case over here, even when we're generating some warm, positive feelings about someone. It's still like us in love with our love towards others, or like there's something quite tainted about our thinking process that feels trap like. So I think we're just trying to avoid that. We don't really want to see what we're up to as an individual, because as an individual we're self-centered and hurting people, even if relatively we're doing okay. And I wouldn't say that you're a mean person or hurting people necessarily, so it's pretty subtle. But you more
Yoga bowing, use the word wholesome. What is there some part of the path that is wholesome? Or what does that look like?
I think it's all wholesome if we want to look at a part like that, but that includes the negativity. It includes anger. It includes the other end of the spectrum. That if we're looking for too much wholesomeness, then we're ignoring a whole bunch of the rest of life, even if it's pain in another person. How wholesome is that? But here it is. Life is suffering. It's everywhere. So wholesome includes it all.
Thank you.
James.
James Bowen. So, with the uh, with the monks, isn't there an aspect of not having a choice in being a monk, because anyone else that doesn't become a monk continues to keep on failing at seeing their mind?
No, I think there's plenty of realizers who aren't monks. I think it's just more likely, and that's like my biased opinion, that it's more likely to have the support of a tradition that has had a lot of people awaken within the context of that training. I don't think it's necessary, and I think some people are, in fact, better suited in a different tradition, or better suited not to become a monk. Maybe they still even study Buddhism, but we're all so different. Maybe that would not be helpful to a person. Go ahead and yeah.
Another question. In some of the other systems, like the Theravada in them, they have a distinction between a novice monk and a fully ordained monk. And there are certain rules, like if your parents don't give you permission, or if you're disabled, you can't become a fully ordained monk, but you are allowed to become a novice monk. So how how do you actually you know how do you address the fact that being a novice doesn't mean it's lesser, Alan?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, like how to address it. But
A
I think
novice monk is ranked lower, but it's not actually taught lower. I mean, how do you get rid of the misconception of a hierarchy?
through practice, just to see that a ranking is just that. It doesn't mean anything, especially, or monk is a good example of that. You get a credential suddenly and you realize just how paper thin and kind of meaningless on a surface level it is. Might mean a whole lot to hear, but it's just a rank. It really doesn't mean anything, especially on a spiritual path where ranks are beside the point. That's just a name given to it. There really aren't any stages or better or worse or higher or lower. That's just how we talk about things.
James Valen. There's a there's kind of a schism between the Korean monks and the Japanese monks on having kids. And how do you think of vain arguments like that, uh, Nishikai, Alan?
I don't know. I guess I don't go too much into there. Yeah, I might characterize it in a similar way that, mm, yeah, arguing about it doesn't seem so helpful, but yeah, sounds like control to say you should or shouldn't even, or yeah, it I think just shows up differently in different cultures, and there might be valid reasons for that that I'm not aware of. So that's why I hesitate to go in there. I'm not those people in that uh, discussion, so I'd rather not speculate on someone else's discussion unless you have a way of presenting it to me where you have a question about it.
James Valen. What insight do you think the lifestyle of a monk has made you seen that you think would not have been seen without it, Valen?
Hmm. I don't think I can like narrow that down to say what insight have I seen because of this. It's a little too crisp. I think the stillness is helpful, the simplicity is helpful. A lot of sitting is helpful, or that's what's emphasized here and what has been the most helpful. Um, but
Okay, James Valen. When reading some of the Korean books, is that attachment to peace and attachment to form? You know, being attached to the peace of being a monk, Valen?
maybe again, I hesitate to go in there. It sounds like a totally different teaching modality where I think a lot of teachers do teach peace, and I think that it's valid if a teacher is teaching it that way. That yeah, I don't want to go ahead.
Right, James Valen. It sounds like the thing where it says you shouldn't become a monk to escape your problems like debt and livelihood problems. Am I misunderstanding that?
Or rephrase it. I'm following what you just said, but I couldn't link it back to your previous question.
A reason not to become a monk is you should not do it just to escape your debts or escape your problems. And being attached to the peace of being a monk, isn't that just escaping your, the troubles of your life? Going.
I think on some level, and I think it just varies from person to person. So to generally say you should never become a monk just because you have this attachment toward this thing, there wouldn't be many monks because we're all attached to things. There needs to be some of that. As long as we think we're a person, we're going to attach. So we're endeavoring to use that within the context of a large container called Buddhism, and that varies for how those containers move. And one way I've seen it function here a lot is through idealism and attaching to becoming someone, becoming more aware, somehow getting better. You can't help that. Some of that's going to be there. It's more important to be aware of that. So I could go the other way and say that if you want to become a monk to avoid your problems, if you're very aware of that to a specific practitioner, that might be completely appropriate. But a bit hard to generalize. Is that helpful, or you have more? Thank you for the questions. Erlon?
Long bowing. Is there any basic questioning that should sort of be done if we ask for like full ordination, and like a specific example, like should we be done scrutinizing or investigating the teacher if we're looking to Soro bowing?
I don't think so. I think basic questioning is good. I don't think you should ever stop questioning the teacher. One, you can't help but question the teacher, or that just happens. So I wouldn't wait for a point of total trust either. I don't know, for me, like, hard area to talk about because there's like the mind that chatters, that asks questions and questions the teacher, but then there's like the heart that can trust that you can't really talk about. There's just a faith or I don't know how to talk about that area. Can you ask your question again, or I feel like I spun out?
Or bowing. The basic question, is there any kind of investigation that should be finished by the time we're asking for robes? Like anything that should be like over with? I don't know. That's clear.
I don't think so, or maybe I'm not clear on the way that you're asking it, but I don't think anything should be finished. I don't think you need to get to a point to ask. And you might get direct feedback that no, now's not the time, or and keep practicing. Talk to me in 2 years. But no, I don't think there's any standard or protocol. I don't think anything needs to be wrapped up before you can become a special monk and go to the next level. I think it's worse than that. We're the foolish ones. Did you have more?
Or not knowing, do you have any basic protocols or instruction if someone were to come to you asking to be a monk now that you're transmitted and able to give that?
No, I mean, I think first you'd even have to have the resemblance of a student. So, yeah. And even then, I don't think there'd be like a protocol. Thank you.
Androma bowing. What is the relationship between a monk and a monastery. Maybe even particularly in the order of immediate light.
Yeah, pretty open-ended question. I feel like they go hand in hand. A monastery is training monks and kind of clarifying the understanding of what it means to be a monk, what it means to practice. One way that I'm thinking of it is, if you want to see the truth, this is how it's done. You have a teacher presenting how to see the truth, and this is what he would recommend. And the monastery does its best to relatively engender that kind of a practice situation. And the monks try to also embody that for themselves and for the sake of others, at least in this situation. Anything further to narrow it down?
Kanjama, just to take it further, what is the responsibility of monks to the monastery and yeah, just to the monastery? Rowan?
It varies from person to person, but I think it's a good idea to give it as much attention as you can. It's where practice occurs. It's where you can have Dharma talks. It's where you can train your mind. It's just much more difficult other places. You also get to interface with Sangha. You get to interface with the teacher. So it feels important. Maybe I get a little hung up on what's the responsibility, because that's a pretty hard thing to like parse out or say that you should be doing this, is a bit what I think of when I think of responsibility, how it's conventionally used.
Kanjama, to use it again, what is the responsibility of a monk to his or her teacher? Rowan?
Same thing, pretty individual. I think that people's relationship is so different to their teacher. So again, I'm just hung up on the word responsibility. What I'd recommend is to talk to the teacher whenever it feels appropriate, to include them in your practice. And yeah, beyond that, it's just pretty individual, pretty situational. I don't have anything else to say after the question. Do you have another way of going into it?
Kanjama, no, I think you're answering the questions I'm asking. The third one would be, can you name or describe what it is that maybe pushed you, to be specific, into taking full ordination? What is that? What would you call that, to go from, just following a spiritual path to, committing, or however you would describe that that step that you take when you become a monk? Bowing.
I think for me, and perhaps for a lot of others, it's inspiration. Is that in the way that I described and trying to present it is recognizing what a fool I am and seeing how valuable this is. And there's no proof for that. I can't sell that to someone else, but for me personally, it just bubbled and it wouldn't go away, and still hasn't. Even though it looks like it even to myself that like it's dimmed, or that life is taking me in other areas. But so like maybe the inspiration doesn't feel as strong, but it is still there. It's still, I was certain that I wanted to become a monk. So for me, just inspiration that this isn't bullshit. This is a good way of working with your life. And I felt that I had checked out quite a few other ways of working with my life from my culture and the people around me. This felt like the most genuine and straightforward way for me.
Kajima Bowing, are we making a commitment to this community or to this monastery or to this teacher when we take ordination vows?
I think a little bit, pretty tentative, or I wouldn't really get into specifics about that too much, that this is your community, it's your teacher's community. You have a specific teacher and a specific community and a specific building. So yes, return to those. The way you return to those is just gonna be very different. And you could ask your teacher about what is responsibility, or those are good questions. I wouldn't mind stealing them for a Dokuzan.
So I don't know how many, but quite a number of people have come here and practiced and not received Jukai at all. Some people have received Jukai and given their Roxy back, and then one person even came back and asked for it back again. And so kind of descriptive a little bit of what you're saying, everybody's doing this differently. But there's that, and then there's people who receive Jukai and probably will never even ask or even have an interview about being fully ordained. Another person may come on, just interject this in the center of the whole thing. There are people who come on to Zoom, have been doing this for years and years. I think there's some on there right now that have never had an interview with them. And so there's that understanding. People are studying in that way with this teacher, with this Sangha, with this community, with this kind of teaching. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is a long question, so you don't have to record it. And then there are people who have gone through all of this, all of those stages. They've gone through everyone. They've become fully ordained monk. Well, I'm not going to pick on anybody, particularly. I'm not here to do that or evaluate or judge anyone, but I'm saying people have gone all the way. I mean, completely been fully ordained, transmitted, and then have just dropped the whole thing and left. And I'm sure they have their considerations, their reasons and so on for leaving or going another direction. And there are people who have changed. Your dynamic has totally changed from when we first started as a teacher-student situation. Several people in here have been all different kinds of, it's quite a, what do they call it, a parabola? Is that close? Help me out here, you guys. A gonash?
Potpourri is what I was gonna
A
go.
potpourri. Yes, it's quite a, and what I'm saying, what I'm getting at here is a simple ask based on all of that elaboration, variation, and potpourri. So what is your understanding of what that is about relative to your practice, relative to anything that has happened here, including the extreme, I would say in one extreme of listening to this teaching and this teacher in this community and then just leaving and never coming back, or someone that has been coming back year after year after year, I've never even talked to them. They don't want to talk. I guess they don't. I don't know what the deal is, and I don't mind. I think it's fine. They're studying in the way that they see, and the person who way at the other extreme of the spectrum has gone through everything and then it's just split, and basically without even talking to the one who ordained them, without really saying what it was. What's your understanding of all that? How does that look to you as a Buddhist monk, a transmitted priest, actually? What's your understanding? You don't need to give me a long parabola.
For me, it shows up as just the way confusion operates, or I can use myself as an example of confusion taking me away from it, that it's pretty hard to be around you. It's pretty hard to be around someone who's that dedicated at pointing out what's really going on. We're all pretty squirmy if we're put on the spot 24/7 and we just want a little safe hiding spot. So I think the variations in people splitting off or being fully dedicated and then breaking off quickly, it's just different types of confusion, different ways of shutting down. And I don't think that that's always the case. I mean, that's a bit of a smear over the whole thing. I don't think it has to be that way, but I think it looks that way, the way you described it.
One more question. What is the differentiation? Again, your understanding of it. You don't have to quote some kind of fact about it. What is your understanding between the confusion you mentioned there and the clarity? The understanding and the confusion, the delusion and the understanding. Wisdom, delusion. What's your understanding? You talked about the delusion.
Yeah, I think being aware is the wisdom of that confusion that arises. And yeah, so you don't have to get out of it. You don't have to change your confusion into something else.
Thank you.
Chokodao bowing. How does becoming a monk interact with identity? I could elaborate on that a little bit. Is it just setting up a new identity? And is that okay? Kind of that area?
I think so, or just to be guessing a little bit about what you're saying, but yes, it's setting up a new identity that will return to the forms, that will endeavor to have some patience towards things, that will endeavor to be kind to other people, that will endeavor. So that's the basic structure of that identity, but your particular ego will really weave in and out of that and make a whole display of it, of your new monk self. And same with all of us, that ego's not going to go anywhere. It's going to keep weaving like that and be pretty complex. So yes, it gets thrown right into the fabric.
Chokodao bowing. So what's the difference between our identity before becoming a monk and then as a monk?
I think generally more awareness. If you're a monk in the context of that's supporting your awareness practice, it's getting you to the cushion, if it's getting you into these forms, if it's supporting you seeing, and perhaps it's not like no teaching fixes everything. It's a way of working with the mind, just being a monk. It's just a way of changing your identity that could potentially be supportive. And it's been going on for a long time, and it's been supportive for a lot of people. I think it's supportive, but depends on the person. A few more minutes. Are there more questions? Let me take James, and I'll take yours, Miyako. Go ahead, James.
James Bowing. So I've been studying about the RPT, about note taking and tracking behavioral changes and development. But Nishikai, how do you actually keep track of things to know that you're not just going in circles and wasting time? Bowing.
Two parts. How do I know that I'm keeping track of things? If you know me, I'm really not. I'm just not very wired in a very particular way. And it's a joke. I mean, obviously I'm tracking things, but I'm not really sure what you're asking. And how do I know I'm not spinning in circles? I feel that quite often I am. And maybe I'd ask other people to help if I don't see my spinning. But can you bring me closer, maybe? Can't read that, but it's a paper.
There's nothing on it.
Oh, that's blank.
Yeah, I'm just checking. Do you use a notebook or anything?
Yeah, I have a notebook. Has a couple notes for this talk.
No, I mean like a meditation tracking notebook to know what you what you've practiced, what you've been taught, so that when Sokuzan's gone, dead and gone, you can look back on it.
Dead and gone.
He's got a lot of YouTube videos, and one thing that he's taught is if you need to remember, you will. That I'm not so concerned about being right relatively. That it's the particularity doesn't matter if the teaching actually stuck. You don't need the particularity. I can express in a new way.
Are you like that one monk who can write everything word for word from memory?
No, Jews on? No, no. Or is that a non? Yeah. No, I have a terrible memory, especially with specifics. I've listened to some songs like thousands of times and I still don't know what they're saying. I can't remember, especially auditory. I really have difficulty remembering anything verbatim. So I have a bit of a handicap in that area, you could say.
You should take better notes then.
Maybe I should.
If you don't, you'll miss Sokuzan in a couple of decades. And he's not here. That one.
Thank you. Mioka, I'll be the last question.
About what is helpful about being a monk here? And I'm thinking in terms of how there is no set guidelines for a lot of things and how our life might show up.
Oh, I wouldn't be able to be a monk anywhere else, I'm pretty sure, because of that lack of formal discipline or lack of being able to shape my life in a lot of different ways. Or I'm a bit of a, I don't know, I struggle with meeting other people's expectations. Let me put it that way. So if there's strong expectations, without a lot of room and generosity to work with me, I would just bail out. And that makes it seem quite soft and easy here, but that isn't the case either.
Thank you.
Thank you. One.